We are always told to process trauma. And some of us process trauma by going to therapy. But although therapy is a good thing, it's not always absolutely necessary to process trauma. The question becomes really, how do you know if trauma has been processed or not? Well, here's a clue. Take, for example, the Holocaust and the Jews who survived the concentration camps. Over and over, you hear family members, offspring, children, and grandchildren say they never talked about it. They never discussed it. They never described it. It was just not talked about. And what about people who weren't Jews, who didn't have to worry about the Holocaust per se, but who lived through the war as teenagers, watching the bombs fall on their town all over Europe, and knowing that at any moment one of those bombs could hit your own home? After a bomb raid, walking outside and seeing dead bodies. I was told, for instance, by my mother that the dead bodies looked like mannequins thrown around. They didn't look real. She was a teenager, 17-ish, when the war was experienced by her. The fact that she could talk about the fact that the bodies didn't seem real was a good sign. The fact that she described the bombs falling looking like pamphlets were being thrown from a plane, silver pamphlets, and then she learned that they were bombs instead, and they learned to take cover. And then by 19, she was married. How much time did she have to process the war? No time. She married at 19, had me at 19. How much reflection time did she have? None. She immediately was taken up by life, by a marriage, a baby, a relocation to another country, coping, learning, and still basically so young. If trauma is not discussed in a family, if it's not really brought up in depth, then it has not been processed. And what happens when trauma is not processed? It will affect you. It will affect your reactions and your relationships. Processing trauma requires a great deal of self-reflection, a great deal. And when we are young, we don't have time to self-reflect. We're too busy coping with life. We're too busy adulting. But there comes a time around the age of 40-ish, and I've called this the reevaluation of one's life that occurs around the age of 40, in which we can begin to finally slow down enough to have some space to process trauma. More on this later. I call it the self-evaluation at the age of 40. I've done a previous reel on it. I don't remember the number.